Hello, my dear friends and subscribers. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a very special story for you. The third part of our series, Confessions of the Digital Underground. We started with the story of Ghost Protocol, a team hunting for forgotten bitcoins. Then we delved into the murky world of phone fraud with the confession of an operator called Cypher. And today I'm going to tell you the story of someone known on the darknet as Shadow Tech. This isn't just a story about a hacker. This is the story of how an ordinary guy, a talented IT freelancer from Austin, turned into a master of social engineering. A man who can make you give up your most valuable possessions with a single phone call. What makes a person cross that line? How does it feel when your voice becomes a weapon? And most importantly, what price does one pay when this game ends? You'll learn about the Phantom Zone team's most daring operation yet, an attack on Dallas businesses that netted nearly $300,000, about betrayal, imprisonment, and trying to start your life over. But this story is more than just a crime story. It's an inside look at the methods scammers use every day against ordinary people and businesses. Knowledge that can protect you and your loved ones. And perhaps that's the paradox. A man who once used people's trust against themselves is now helping to protect themselves from others like him. Get comfortable, make sure your door is locked, and don't answer any unknown calls for the next hour. We're going on a journey through the dark side of human psychology, to a place where your biggest enemy is not a hacking program, but the human voice on the other end of the line. Because the most dangerous hacker attack doesn't start with your computer, it starts with your trust. I was a freelancer in Austin until the 10th of July 2015, when I took an order that turned my life around. Austin, Texas. A city of startups, music, and endless opportunities for people like me, 27-year-old techies with ambition but no strings attached. I lived in a small studio flat in the East Riverside neighborhood. Nothing fancy, a desk, a bed, a powerful computer, and a view of the city that never sleeps. The perfect place for someone who made a living from the comfort of his own home. My real name didn't matter. Online, I was known as Shadow Tech. In real life, I was just another IT freelancer who took orders on Upwork, Freelancer, and a few specialized forums. Web development, server configuration, sometimes a bit of white hat hacking, if a client wanted to test the security of their website. Nothing criminal, just ordinary work for ordinary money. By July 2015, my bills were paid, but barely. The freelance market was getting more and more crowded. Clients were paying less and less, and competitors from countries with lower prices were taking away simple projects. I started looking for something more lucrative, where my skills could be applied unconventionally. The 10th of July 2015, Friday. The heat in Austin was unbearable. My air conditioner was running at full blast, and I was sitting at my computer looking at new orders. Normally, I didn't go to darknet forums to look for work, but that day something pushed me to check a few specialized job boards, and there I saw a post. Need a specialist to test the effectiveness of a phishing campaign. Payment in bitcoins, $500 per test. Experienced only. I froze. It was a watershed moment. Part of me realized that this was no longer the gray area I sometimes worked in. This was frankly black territory, but the other part, the louder part, was whispering, just one time, 500 quid for a simple job, no one will get hurt. I replied to the message, and a few hours later we were chatting in an encrypted chat room. The person on the other end introduced himself as Nexus. He was brief and businesslike. We need to check how many people will fall for a phishing email purportedly on behalf of their bank. The email list is there. The email is ready. Your job is to run the campaign and collect statistics. No withdrawals, just data collection. It sounded almost legal, almost like real security testing. I agreed, received instructions, and spent the weekend setting up the servers. On the 17th of July, the letters went out to 500 recipients. The email looked perfect. Bank logo, correct fonts, compelling text about suspicious activity, and the need to confirm information. Inside was a link to a fake login page indistinguishable from the real one. By the end of the day, 137 people had clicked the link. 98 had entered their logins and passwords. When I sent the report to Nexus, he responded almost instantly. Impressive, 19.6% conversion rate. Here's your $500. There's more work to do if you're interested. $500 appeared on my Bitcoin wallet in an hour. Easy money. Too easy. I told myself it was an experiment, that I was just testing people's security awareness. But deep down, I knew I had crossed the line. 2 weeks later, on the 25th of August, I took another order from Nexus. This time it was to call a few people, posing as a tech support person from their internet service provider, and trick them out with their login details. I had to record the calls to analyze the success of the approach. The first call I made was to a middle-aged woman from Houston. I was sure she would figure me out in the first few seconds, but she didn't. My voice sounded calm and professional. I talked about a routine security update, about how we need to confirm your information so there's no service interruption. And she gave me everything: login, password, even the last 4 digits of her credit card to confirm my identity. When I ended the call and hung up, I was shaking, not from fear or shame, but from adrenaline, from realizing the power I'd just felt. She believed every word I said. I could make her do anything. By the end of the day, I had successfully worked 8 out of 10 of my intended targets. Nexus was more than pleased and transferred me $800 instead of the promised $500. My first bonus in this new world. "You have talent, Shadow Tech," he wrote. "People trust you. It's a rare gift." In September and October, I took several more such orders. The pattern was always the same: calls or emails on behalf of banks, ISPs, tech services, and each time it got easier. I learned to adjust to the interlocutor, to change my tone, to find an approach. With businessmen, I was brief and businesslike. With the elderly, I was patient and attentive. With technicians, I used professional jargon, creating the illusion of my own man. By December 2015, I was earning more money than ever before. My flat was transformed. New appliances, designer furniture. I could afford to dine at the best restaurants in Austin, but most importantly, I was being sucked deeper and deeper into it. I remember the exact moment when I realized I couldn't go back to my regular job. On December 15th, I was sitting in La Condesa Cafe in downtown Austin, sipping an expensive mezcal and looking at reviews of my real work on freelance platforms. Projects that once seemed interesting now looked boring and pointless. $20 an hour for website layout, after $800 for a couple of hours of social engineering. That night, Nexus sent me a new message. "It's time to take it to the next level. Come to this address tomorrow at 20 o'clock. Password is Amber Sunset." The link led to a secure chat room on the darknet. At that moment, I didn't know that behind that door, a whole team of others like me was waiting for me. I didn't know that I would soon be involved in operations that would bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I certainly had no idea what would be waiting for me in 5 years. I was sitting in my stylish flat, looking out at the lights of Austin at night, and I felt like I had the world at my feet. I had made my first dirty money, but that was only the first step. I realized I could do more, and someone was already waiting for me on the darknet. On the 12th of March 2016, I opened the chat room that became my new home. I remember that evening in great detail. It was raining outside the window of my renovated Austin flat, a rarity for March. I was sitting at my new dual-monitor computer, one of my first purchases with dirty money. It was exactly 8 p.m. on the clock when I clicked on the Nexus link and entered the password, Amber Sunset. The chat window opened and I saw a list of nicknames, about 20 people. Wireghost, Black Mamba, Nexus, and others. Some were clearly online, others were offline. I didn't know then that I was looking at people who would change my life. "Welcome, Shadow Tech," Nexus wrote. "This is Phantom Zone. This is where we plan and coordinate." That night I learned that Phantom Zone was more than just a chat room. It was a 23-person organization specializing in social engineering and phishing. They had been working together for over 2 years, targeting small and medium-sized businesses across America. Everyone had a role: techies, voices to call, analysts, coordinators, and now they wanted me to join. "You're a born voice," Nexus told me. "People believe you. And with your technical skills, you can be both a developer and a performer." The offer was simple: Work with us, get a percentage of every successful transaction. No commitments, no contracts, just mutual benefit. I agreed, of course. A week later, I was involved in the first joint operation, an attack on a small chain of coffee shops in Seattle. The scheme was elegant. WireGhost created phishing pages that mimicked the page of their processing company, and I called the managers on behalf of the security service and directed them there for a data update. In 3 days, we accessed their payment system and withdrew a little over $18,000. My share was $3,000. By the summer of 2016, I was fully integrated into the team. Every day started with checking encrypted messages, discussing new goals, analyzing successes and failures. I improved my skills by studying psychology, linguistics, manipulation techniques. I learned to change accents, to imitate different dialects, to adapt to the psychotype of the victim. By 2018, I could get anyone to tell me their secrets. One of my favorite techniques was simple. I would call a company employee, introduce myself as an IT professional, and say that suspicious activity had been noticed on their system. This was followed by the key phrase, "I can fix the problem, but I need your help." You don't want to be blamed for a data leak, do you? Fear worked without fail. I remember exactly. On the 17th of May 2018, we ran an operation against a marketing agency in Chicago. I called their CFO, posing as a bank employee. In a 12-minute conversation, I convinced him to transfer $61,000 to a reserve account because of suspicious activity. When a person transfers the money themselves, it's a perfect scheme. No sign of forced entry. By the end of 2019, our team was at its peak. 27 people, well-established processes, stable income. We were like a corporation, only in the shadows. I moved into a penthouse in downtown Austin, bought an Audi RS7, traveled the world. But I always wanted more. Small operations didn't have the same adrenaline. I craved something big, something audacious, something that would test the limits of my abilities. That's how the idea for Dallas was born. The biggest operation in our team's history. A series of coordinated attacks on dozens of businesses in one region. We were on top, but I wanted more. I wish I'd realized where this was going to take me. On the 1st of September 2020, we picked Dallas, and it was our biggest game. Dallas was not a random choice. We spent months studying different regions, analyzing local businesses, their connections, the level of protection. Dallas was a perfect fit. A growing market, lots of new businesses, insufficiently strict security protocols. But most importantly, interconnectivity. Many small businesses worked with the same banks, used the same accounting systems, and had common suppliers. The plan was ambitious. 14 companies in 21 days, restaurants, clothing shops, 2 startups, and a small investment firm. We were looking at a total of about $250,000, the largest operation in our team's history. Preparations took the whole month of August. WireGhost created phishing pages and set up servers. Black Mamba studied company financial flows. Voxtrick prepared fake documents. I worked on voice scripts, honing every intonation, every phrase, a different approach for each target. The operation began on the 7th of September. The first targets were 2 restaurants in downtown Dallas. I called on behalf of their processing company, reported a massive fraud attempt, and directed them to a phishing page to change their credentials. By evening, we had accessed their payment systems and withdrew $17,000. On the 12th of September, we took on the clothing shops. Another legend, representatives of a revamped vendor platform. I called managers, told them about the new portal where they could get discounts, and asked them to register. Of course, the identity verification required all the same data, another $23,000. By the 15th of September, we had broken into the systems of half of our targets. The money was flowing, $17,000, $23,000, $39,000, $52,000. We were on our way to a target of $250,000. The most difficult target was an investment firm on the 20th floor of a tower in downtown Dallas. They had good security, experienced IT staff, but we had a secret weapon. Knowledge of the corporate hierarchy. I called not the IT director, but his deputy, posing as a consultant hired by the CIO for a secret security audit. It worked flawlessly. He provided me with everything I asked for fear of letting the boss down. On the 18th of September, we crossed the $200,000 mark. Nexus offered to close the operation, but I insisted on continuing. We were so close to our goal. It was my mistake. By the 22nd of September, the total had reached $286,000. We celebrated, sending messages of congratulations to each other, planning how we would spend the money. I transferred my share, $58,000, through several fake wallets, bought more cryptocurrencies, then transferred part of it to an offshore account. Standard procedure. But something changed. I noticed it after about a week. WireGhost, usually the most active in our chats, became silent. He answered briefly, delayed reports, skipped daily checks. On the 15th of November 2020, I noticed that WireGhost was too quiet. I shared my concerns with Nexus. He agreed. Something was wrong. We started checking, changing communication channels, testing new security protocols, looking for signs of leaks. Nothing. But my intuition screamed danger. Dallas was too loud, too successful. We had attracted attention. On the 27th of November, I received an encrypted message from Black Mamba. WG has been in communication with the feds. Confirmed. Go offline. I instantly disconnected, deleted all apps, moved my cryptocurrency to new wallets. But it was too late. At 6:12 a.m. on the morning of the 3rd of December 2020, my door shuttered with a bang. An FBI team in full gear burst into my penthouse. I didn't even resist. As I was being led out in handcuffs in the hallway, I saw him. WireGhost. His real name was James Larson, 34, a techie from Portland. He was standing next to an agent in a suit, not looking me in the eye. "You could have just disappeared," I told him. "Why turn everyone in?" He finally looked up. There was a strange mixture of guilt and relief in his eyes. "I had a baby, Shadow Tech. I wanted a fresh start." The arrest was only the beginning. Over the next few months, the FBI uncovered virtually the entire structure of Phantom Zone. 19 of the 27 members were arrested. We were charged with computer fraud, identity theft, money laundering, organized criminal activity. The list was long. My preliminary hearing was on the 17th of February 2021. The evidence was overwhelming. Call records, screenshots of chats, financial transactions. WireGhost turned over everything. The court offered a deal. Plead guilty, testify against the others in exchange for a reduced sentence. I refused. Perhaps that was my last bit of pride. On the 17th of March 2021, the judge handed down the sentence. 2 years in federal prison, a $150,000 fine, 5 years of parole upon release. As I was being led out of the courtroom, I looked at WireGhost, who had testified against us all. He only got 6 months house arrest and probation. I didn't feel hate, only emptiness. The prison door slammed shut, but my story was just beginning. Prison started on the 17th of March 2021, but I didn't break down. FCI Bastrop Federal Prison is an hour outside of Austin. Low concrete buildings, barbed wire, observation towers. This is where I was to spend 2 years of my life, from March 2021 to April 2023. The first day I remembered forever. The standard admission procedure, uniform, familiarization with the rules, medical examination, placement in a cell. My roommate was Eric, a former bank employee who got 3 years for embezzlement. He recognized me from the news. "So, you're the hacker from Dallas?" I didn't bother correcting him about hacker. Technically, we never literally hacked into systems. We just convinced people to voluntarily give us access. But who cares? The result was the same. The first weeks were the hardest. The loss of freedom, the lack of privacy, the strict routines. I, who was used to controlling every aspect of my life, suddenly found myself in a place where I couldn't even decide when to take a shower. On the 12th of April 2021, I received my first letter from my lawyer. The property that could be proven to be legally acquired was retained by me. Everything else was forfeited. My penthouse, my Audi, my watch collection, most of my investments, all went to pay the fine and compensate the victims. The strange thing is, I didn't feel much regret. Money and things were always just a byproduct. The main thing was control, power, a sense of superiority, and now it's all gone. I decided to make the most of my time. I enrolled in an educational program and started studying legal cybersecurity and ethical hacking. Perhaps after my release, I could find a job as a consultant, helping companies protect themselves from people like me. On the 2nd of September 2021, I got my first access to a computer in the prison's education center. No internet access, of course, with a limited range of programs, but even that felt like a breath of fresh air. I could program, create simple systems, solve problems. It reminded me of the times when I was just a freelancer before I crossed the line. The winter of 2021 to 2022 was a period of reflection. I thought a lot about what brought me here. Not a lack of money, I was making enough from freelancing, not a lack of opportunity. With my skills, I could have found a job at any tech company. It was a lust for power, for control, for thrills, and most importantly, a lack of moral restraints. By the spring of 2022, I was teaching basic programming to other inmates. The administration approved of my initiative. It helped occupy my time and gave me useful skills. In prison, I found something that was missing in my previous life: the opportunity to really help people. The 17th of March, 2022 marked exactly 1 year of my imprisonment. I marked the date by writing in my diary a long reflection on who I was and who I was going to become. One thing I knew for sure: there was no way back to my old life. In the autumn of 2022, I received notification that I was eligible for parole. My behavior, my participation in educational programs, my work with other inmates, all of this was taken into account. Being able to get out a month early seemed like a gift. On the 14th of February 2023, I had my parole hearing. The commission asked a lot of questions about remorse, about plans for the future, about understanding the harm done. I was honest as I could be. Yes, I realized the damage. Yes, I realized that I have deceived real people, caused them financial and emotional damage. No, I can't promise that I will never cross the line again, but I will do my best to follow the legal path. On the 3rd of April 2023, I walked out of the gates of FCI Bastrop. I was wearing the same clothes I had been arrested in: jeans, t-shirt, trainers. Everything else was a thing of the past. The first weeks of freedom were strange. The world had changed in 2 years, and I had changed even more. I rented a cheap flat on the outskirts of Austin, found a temporary job as a consultant for a small IT company. No penthouses, no sports cars, just a regular life. On parole, I couldn't leave Texas, had to check in regularly with my parole officer, had no contact with former associates, and of course, no violations of the law. I've been tempted at times, especially when I saw obvious vulnerabilities in the systems I was working with. But I stopped myself every time. By early 2024, I had my feet on the ground. I was working remotely for 2 companies specializing in cybersecurity. They knew about my background. I was honest with them. Some firms value experience on the other side. On the 15th of March, 2024, I did something I'd been thinking about for many months. Logged into the darknet through a series of proxies and anonymizers and posted my story on the forum. No names, no specific companies, no technical details that could hurt anyone. Just an account of the path that led me from freelancing to crime in prison. I wasn't expecting much of a reaction, maybe a few comments, a few taunts, but the post suddenly went viral. Dozens, then hundreds of responses, questions, discussions, even gratitude for my candor. Some called me a traitor for publishing my methods. Others marveled at the audacity of the operation. Others thanked me for warning them of the risks. I didn't respond. It was my only post. I said all I wanted to say. Today, as I write these lines, it has been almost a year since publication. I'm still working in cybersecurity, helping companies defend against social engineering attacks. I continue to check in with my probation officer, even though I still have 3 years left on my probation. I can't say I'm completely remorseful. That would be hypocritical. In those years, I enjoyed what I was doing. I liked the power, the control, the thrill, but the price was too high. If you're reading this, I hope my story teaches you something. Maybe you, too, have this craving for power, for control over others. Maybe you, too, sometimes dream of stepping over the line. I'm not going to give you a moral. Everyone makes their own choice. Just remember, every action has consequences, and one day you'll have to answer for them. I'm free, but the shadows of the past are still there.